Our sign language interpreter is Yula Nzale. Now, tonight, after months of accusations, counter-accusations, and defense of an Indian conglomerate, the Adani Group, President William Ruto has cancelled all engagements with the Adani Group, affecting two critical projects affecting the transport and energy sectors of the country, worth a combined 356 billion shillings. Addressing a joint sitting of Parliament, President Ruto has cancelled the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport expansion project, which was at an advanced stage of consideration. He has also ended the building of electricity transmission lines by the Adani Group, a project that was to cost 95 billion shillings in a public-private partnership arrangement. The president attributed his decision to new information received from partner states, now directing the two ministries to move with speed and identify alternative partners to execute the projects. Stephen Leto reports.
President William Ruto has put the last nail on the proverbial coffin of the Adani deal, an arrangement that will have handed East Africa's largest international airport, as well as the Kenya electricity transmission company KETRACO, to the Indian-based firm. President Ruto telling the bicameral parliament that new information from investigative agencies and partner nations were key determinants.
Honourable members, I have stated in the past and now reiterate today that in the face of undisputed evidence or credible information on corruption, I will not hesitate to take decisive action.
Subsequently, President Ruto told MPs that the Kenyan government has arrived at a decision to end Adani deals in Kenya, both at the aviation and energy sectors.
I have directed agencies within the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum to immediately cancel the ongoing procurement process for JKI expansion public-private partnership transaction, as well as the recently concluded KETRACO transmission in public.
The Adani deals were already facing parliamentary scrutiny, with the Public Investment Committee on Commercial Affairs bringing in Auditor General Nancy Gathungu to conduct a forensic audit Thursday morning, hours before the president delivered his State of the Nation address. Energy CS Opiyo Wandayi had appeared to lean towards continuation of the Adani KETRACO deal, despite indictments in bribery and corruption in America.
The second limb of that question is, could these bribery or corruption claims have a bearing on our own process? To my knowledge, Honorable Chair, there has been no case of corruption or bribery insofar as this PIP of Adani Energy Solutions is concerned.
And immediately commence the process of onboarding alternative partners, because these are important projects. Honourable members, the work of taking our nation forward is our collective responsibility as citizens. For this reason, we value the contribution of all, whether they come in the form of support or encouragement, suggestion or proposal, criticism or protest.
The president defended the Adani KETRACO deals in October, with ODM leader and AUC candidate Raila Odinga having defended the deals a few days before the president.
The Adani Group are investing in the transmission line. Their money, 95 billion. We would have otherwise gone to borrow that money, burden the people of Kenya. This is now a private sector investment, the same way Keshan here is a private sector investment, the same way Sosian is a private sector investment. We will pay for that transmission line using a wheeling charge that has been negotiated.
Adani company conglomerate is worth over $200 billion. It cannot be an Adani gate. Deal with the issues as they are. If some people have made mistakes, let them own up that they made some mistakes. But do not begin to condemn innocent.
With the Adanis now forced to take off, President Ruto has called for high standards of procurement, devoid of corruption and suspect dealings. With President William Ruto's administration having faced public condemnation over the private-public partnership, particularly with the Adani Group, he has now moved to restore public confidence. But the question is, how much will the constellation cost the taxpayer? Stephen Leto, Citizen TV, Parliament Buildings, Nairobi.
Now, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport expansion project was billed to cost up to $2 billion, translating to 260 billion shillings, in an arrangement that would have handed the crucial transport hub to the Indian firm Adani for a whole 30 years. The Adani Group was also set to build, operate and transfer power transmission lines at a cost of 95.6 billion shillings. The Adani deals, now cancelled, were sealed with breakneck speed and shrouded in secrecy, sparking widespread criticism. Emmanuel Toh looks at the two deals.
The name Adani was not popular in Kenya until March this year, when the Indian conglomerate submitted a privately initiated proposal to Kenya Airports Authority, proposing to develop and expand the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport through the build, operate and transfer model under the public-private partnership. In the deal that was completed in record 17 days, Adani proposed to give JKIA a facelift through refurbishment and building of a new apron, taxiway system and 2 rapid exit taxiways slated for completion by 2029, among other phased developments at a total cost of 260 billion Kenyan shillings. In return, Adani will take over the operations of the airport for a period of 30 years. During the period, Adani will take over nearly all the functions currently performed by the Kenya Airports Authority, including having the powers to hire and fire employees of the airport, among others. However, even before the deal could take off, concerns arose as it emerged that Kenyans may have gotten a raw deal and handed the short end of the stick by the Indian investors. The disgruntled KAA employees going on strike, shutting down operations in the country's airports. In the end, the court slammed brakes on the deal, raising a red flag on the speed, secrecy and lack of public participation in the process. But even before the dust could settle on the JKIA takeover, the conglomerate had concluded yet another critical infrastructure deal, the CS for Energy announcing an Adani Ketraco power transmission deal.
On the 9th of this month, Ketraco executed a commercial agreement with the Adani Energy Solutions of India.
Under the second arrangement, Adani Energy Solutions, an Adani Group subsidiary, would build and operate power infrastructure, including transmission lines in the country for 30 years. In the build, own, operate, transfer arrangement, Adani will develop the 400 kilovolt Gilgil through Thika and Mala to Konza transmission line to stretch 208 kilometers. The second 220 kilovolt line from Rongai to Keringet and Chemosit would have covered 99 kilometers, with new substations at Rongai, Keringet and Chemosit. A third line would have been constructed from Menengai through Olkalau to Romuruti and extend for 89 kilometers. If not for President Ruto's cancellation, the Indian firm would also have set up a substation at Thurdibuoro in Kisumu County. The cancellation of the Ketraco deal, which was signed, could be tricky for Kenya, as it may cost the country a huge penalty for terminating it. From the word go, the Adani deal seemed to be a done deal, one that was signed, sealed and delivered. But the lack of public participation and the secret nature in which the deal was crafted has led the deal to this current position, which has forced President William Ruto to cancel it, giving hope to Kenyans that he is a listening president. Emmanuel Toh, Citizen TV, Parliament Buildings, Nairobi.
And way before the president cancelled those two deals, a U.S. federal court issued an arrest warrant for Indian billionaire Gautam Adani for alleged involvement in bribery and defrauding investors. This follows an investigation by America's domestic investigative agency, the FBI, which established Adani and co-conspirators agreed to bribe Indian government officials to get lucrative energy contracts. It also follows an indictment at Eastern District Court in New York by U.S. prosecutors who who accused Adani and his conglomerate of involvement in corruption and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Ayub Abdikadio on how an alleged web of corruption and fraudulent schemes may have informed President William Ruto's cancellation of the controversial Adani deals.
The arrest warrant against Adani for bribery, money laundering and fraud comes hours after an indictment of the Indian conglomerate, the Adani Group, in schemes that were fraudulently conceived according to U.S. prosecutors and involved a web of other actors, including Adani's nephew. The indictment before New York's district court listed Gautam Adani and 7 other defendants, including Sagar Adani, Vinet Jain, Ranjit Gupta and Cyril Cabanes, as having orchestrated an elaborate scheme in order to bribe Indian government officials to secure contracts worth billions, and lying about the bribery scheme as the aid sought to raise capital from American and international investors in order to invest in energy projects. The grand jury charges also read the bribery scheme following the promise which took place between 2021 and 22, resulting into an agreement between electricity companies from 5 Indian regions, Adani and the 7 indicted promising $265 million US, equivalent to 34.4 billion Kenya shillings in bribes to get Indian government contracts. The American prosecutors say the Adanis and another executive at the Adani Green Energy, Vinet Jain, raised more than $3 billion US, equivalent to 390 billion Kenya shillings, in loans and bonds by hiding their corruption from lenders and investors. The charges further stating some conspirators referred privately to Gautam Adani, using the codenames Numero Uno or the Big Man, while Sagar Adani allegedly used his cell phone to track specifics about the bribes. The charges also state the accused conspired to pay bribes to and for the benefit of government officials to compel Indian electricity distribution companies to enter into an agreement with Solar Energy Corporation of India, owned by the Indian government, in order to retain business. Adani's indictment of a multi-million-dollar bribery and fraud scheme involving energy projects and charge for rule breaking exposes institutional failure in undertaking extensive due diligence. The robust defense by Energy CS Opiyo Wandayi consequently failing to cool off public anger as reverberations of the indicted Indians' troubles spill over the Atlantic into Kenyan shores. Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV.
Back to the House, members of Parliament have lauded President William Ruto's decision to cancel Adani deals, saying the move will restore public confidence in the executive. The lawmakers, however, called on the national government to take seriously the challenges in the education sector and in the implementation of the new healthcare insurance scheme.
Whether it is JKIA or even the ones relating to energy, they were all under procurement process, and the negotiations had not even begun. For JKIA, what we were still doing was the due diligence. And so, to me, it is timely, it is stopped at a time when we don't have any legal challenges, no issues. Actually, this is part and parcel of the process of procuring through PIP, what we call public engagement, and also due diligence.
Public-private partnership is not new to Kenya. The SGR, the express highway, majority of our power producers are on PPP. So we can still go back, do due diligence, get a reputable firm, because we must fix our airport.
From day one, the Adani deals were suspect. The Adani deals were wrongly placed, wrongly centered, and wrongly oriented. And therefore, what the president has done is to be accountable to the concerns of the people of Kenya.
President Ruto is coming out as a listening president, and this administration is changing the way they engage with the members of the public.
Takeaway is the issue of Adani. I think that the issue of Adani has been a very major thorn in the flesh of Kenyans in the context of public trust and the contact that we have seen with JKIA and the fears that were there.
The moment Adani has been indicted in America, it technically means that Adani cannot continue dealing with Kenya.
We should also extend to health, because we are aware that Adani was engaged in other public-private partnership.
Tukianzia hii ya Adani,
rais amewaonyesha Wakenya kwamba nimesikia sauti zenu, hii maneno ya Adani yote tuyafutilia mbali.
The state of the nation is as follows. Kenyans are hungry, Kenyans are broke, children and the education system is broken.
With a very low inflation of 2.7% is a big indicator of our economic growth. With a GDP of 5.6%, it's also a big indicator of economic growth.
And I want to appreciate him for mentioning increment in agricultural production.
And President William Ruto has strongly condemned illegal arrests and extrajudicial actions by the police, which he terms a serious threat to public life and liberty. Addressing Parliament this afternoon, the head of state urged members of the public with useful information on police officers who should be indicted on grounds of being involved in police brutality and extrajudicial killings to come forward and assist in investigations by the DCI and the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Safina Chengoma has more.
Appearing in Parliament for a second time to fulfill his obligation of a State of the Nation address, President William Ruto took his time to weigh in on pressing issues compromising the security of the state. His address coming amidst an outcry over cases of abductions, enforced disappearances and unexplained killings. Ruto promised accountability and justice for victims of illegal arrests and police brutality, especially during the recent protests in the country.
A good number of alleged disappearances have also turned out to be arrests made by police officers. In such cases, the suspects have been duly arraigned in court. I must, however, make it very clear, I condemn any excessive or extrajudicial action which puts the life and liberty of any person at risk, including disappearances and threats to life.
President Ruto defended the constitutional right to a peaceful protest, but was quick to emphasize the importance of striking a balance between democratic expression and guaranteeing public safety and security, as well as the country's prosperity.
Criminals and subversive elements who infiltrate and hijack peaceful protests are a threat both to legitimate protesters and to the public. Incidences of violent criminality in the name of protests threaten the safety of innocent people, public assets, private property, and the social order.
His address comes against the backdrop of alarming statistics that show that Kenya has reported 97 cases of femicide since August, signaling a sharp rise in gender-based violence incidents. Killing of women, according to the president, have become a ticking time bomb.
Left unaddressed, these incidents will cause the women of our nation to feel increasingly unsafe, even in their own homes. It is my hope that in due course, those found culpable will face the full force of the law.
The solution, however, according to Ruto, will have to go beyond the rule of law.
It is time for each of us, political leaders, public officers, religious leaders, traditional institutions and family members, to do our part in raising boys into morally upright men who will never need to affirm their masculinity at the expense of women.
Safin Acheng Oma, Citizen TV.
At the same time, President William Ruto has defended his administration's universal health coverage program, now named Taifa Care, as an essential program that will ensure the poor and vulnerable gain access to quality health care. The president says the government is moving to clear debts owed to healthcare providers as the ship steadies. On education, the president says the troubles bedeviling the second oldest university, Moi University, are squarely out of internal mismanagement issues. Brenda Wanga reports.
Universal health coverage was at the top of the president's agenda when he addressed both houses of parliament in his third State of the Nation address.
Under Taifa Care, we have introduced a comprehensive benefits package.
The flagship program that was rolled out last month is targeted at availing quality healthcare affordably to all sectors of society. But its implementation under the Social Health Authority and its three funds, the primary, the secondary and the emergency and critical illnesses funds, has been bumpy, with Kenyans finding it difficult to access services and a slow uptake by some healthcare providers. Ruto now saying that these teething issues are being ironed out.
Once the transition from NHIF is complete and SHIP becomes fully operational, Kenya will have a healthcare system that guarantees dignity, peace of mind, and equitable access for every citizen for the first time in our 60 years of independence.
The president also committed to clearing debts owed to healthcare facilities under both the now defunct NHIF and the Taifa Care programs.
SHA will pay all October claims in full by next week. And it will continue like that going into the future.
The president also touched on the education sector in his address, enumerating what he terms as strides in the transition to junior schools, investments in TVETs, and the reforms in the funding for higher education, which has also faced challenges and locked out some students from accessing learning. But he also singled out the troubled Moi University.
Challenges for a few universities, like Moi University, are related to internal administrative and governance issues, which I have given firm instructions that they should be addressed.
The president reiterating that the challenges faced in the implementation of the student-centered funding model are being addressed to ensure that university education is accessible to all, irrespective of their economic backgrounds. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
And the president has slammed the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions for dropping a string of corruption cases, citing lack of evidence to prosecute. He called it a major setback in the fight against graft. Ruto also faulted Parliament for delaying to pass the Conflict of Interest Bill 2024, which he terms as crucial in tackling corruption within the government. Melita Oletenges reports.
2 years into his presidency, William Ruto has upped the ante on the fight against graft, pointing fingers at both the Director of Public Prosecutions and the judiciary. Ruto criticized the DPP for dropping numerous corruption cases and accused the judiciary of undermining efforts by granting anticipatory bail to graft suspects.
It cannot be the case that the Director of Public Prosecutions keeps dropping cases because somehow they are unable to produce witnesses. It cannot also be the case that corruption suspects rush to court to obtain anticipatory bail that shields them from due process.
The president said the prolonged prosecution of corruption cases is also a hindrance in the fight against graft.
There is also no reason for corruption cases to drag in our courts for years, when the same courts are able to determine election petitions and related disputes within 6 months.
He urged members of parliament to pass the Conflict of Interest Bill, which aims to prevent public officials from engaging in business dealings with the government and address potential conflicts of interest.
I implore you, honorable members, to stop dragging your feet on this bill, unless, my friends, there is a conflict of interest in the passing of the conflict of interest legislation.
The president criticized the National Treasury for delaying the implementation of an e-procurement system for nearly a decade. He directed the Treasury to ensure the system is rolled out by the end of the first quarter of 2025. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
And still on the State of the Nation address by the president says efforts to ensure food security are already bearing fruit, with maize production projected to increase to a record 74 million 90-kilogram bags this year. The president spoke of improvement in the livestock sector also, and the president announced that more than 4,800 housing units are up for sale across 21 social housing projects, inviting Kenyans to bid for a unit. Seth Olale has the details.
According to President Ruto, the distribution of 7 million bags of both planting and top-dressing fertilizer to boost food production this year in 45 counties will see a projected increase in maize production. There is currently 47 million 90 kg bags of maize, 8.8 million bags of beans, 10.4 million bags of wheat, and 2.1 million bags of rice in the national food stock. The government says it is on track to increase coffee exports from 51,000 metric tons to 150,000 metric tons by 2027 and raise disbursements through the Cherry Advance Fund from 2.7 billion to 6 billion shillings. According to the head of state, domestic sugar production reached 84,000 metric tons in July this year, surpassing the national monthly consumption average of 40,000 metric tons. The president saying milk production has increased from 4.6 billion litres in 2022 to 5.2 billion litres in 2023, with projections exceeding 6 billion litres this year. The value of exported dairy products has nearly doubled, rising from 4.8 billion in 2022 to 7.2 billion in 2023.
These gains demonstrate how targeted policies can deliver tangible benefits to dairy farmers and drive growth in our economy.
In realizing the affordable housing plan, President William Ruto says 4,888 housing units are now complete and up for sale across 21 social housing projects. The units, comprising studios, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom homes, include 1,041 social housing units, 2,133 affordable housing units, and 1,714 affordable middle-class housing units in 24 counties. Seth Olale, Citizen TV.
And there was heavy deployment of security inside and outside Parliament buildings ahead of the State of the Nation address by the President. Security officers from various units patrolled roads leading to and around Parliament to prevent potential protests organized through social media. Groups that had signalled plans to march to Parliament buildings were met with firm resistance, with several individuals arrested on Harambee Avenue. Ben Kirui was there.
Amid a chilly morning drizzle, security officers braced the cold, pitching tent outside Parliament buildings ahead of the President's much-anticipated State of the Nation address. The surrounding roads were heavily patrolled by various security units, with Harambee Avenue and Parliament Road completely sealed off and motorists directed to use alternative routes. Mobilization drive on social media to occupy Parliament and the potential protest prompted authorities to ramp up security measures even further. A few protesters who attempted to occupy Parliament area were swiftly intercepted, leading to the arrest of 3 individuals along Harambee Avenue. They were later taken to Central Police Station. Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja had earlier declared all protest prohibited, citing the absence of any formal notice from organizers of peaceful demonstrations. Activist groups online had planned to storm Parliament to demand the resignation of President William Ruto, citing a lack of confidence in his leadership. In response to indications that certain groups were planning to occupy Parliament, security forces took no chances, swiftly blocking this road that had been occupied by protesters just 5 months ago. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Parliament Buildings, Nairobi.